Good morning, YouTubers. Okay, we dug out all the pieces that we're gonna need. I'm gonna use this. Wrap around the end of the post. This will be like a shaft for the pulleys in the post. And then we got these pulleys here, 4 of them. And we'll have to fashion these like we did some of the other ones for that little column. And then about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like at least 5, if not more, little eye pins. So we'll start playing with all these pieces here and try to put this together before we glue it on the ship. Took me a while to find everything. I pre-cut this out of some stock, and now I gotta fashion it to look like that little post, a column. And these are the 2 divets for the anchor hoist. So, I think the first thing I'm gonna do is fashion these and get them ready, and then wrap this around the end. And we got to drill through it to put those eye pins in there, so we got to get that thing on the end very solidly so it doesn't move around or anything while we're drilling. That's the plan. The pieces we need for the next step, 43. And I guess some of that is going to be addition to 44. We'll have some braces that get installed. And a few other things down here. I haven't even looked at them yet. One thing at a time. Okay, we got one of them fashioned on this end to look like the divot on the ship. And we got the shivs and shaft eye bolts and that piece on there. So now I'm going to do the second one. I've already drilled with a 1mm drill bit to get that shaft in there for the shivs, and got this brass strip pre-bent to fit, and the pins with the eye bolts are 0.7mm, and little drill bits I got are 0.5 or 1mm. This one's 1mm. So because I don't have a 0.7 for the eye bolts, I'm going to use this 0.5, but I got to punch through this brass strip first with the little larger drill bit. The small one will break off if I try to punch through that. And this one is okay for drilling through, but I'm going to have to put a punch mark on there before I drill, because it's going to try to walk. I know it'll walk on this thing. That little bit of a punch mark will be enough to get through there. And because this brass strip is just sitting on the end there, it's sort of tight, but once I get through, flip it over, ping this side. So I'll probably have to take it off again and it needs a new hole. Line that one up with the little bit of penetration that's in the wood. See how that drill bit tried to walk? If you don't ping that a little bit, it's going to walk. And I'm not quite in the center, so I'm pulling the wood to my left, trying to get that drill bit to walk over to the right a little bit before I punch through. And I took that punch and put it in the grinder and ground a nice pointy tip on it, because it was beat up pretty bad. Yeah, that's through. So now we got to open the wood up to accept the eye bolt, and this is where I'm using the 0.5 drill bit to create a spot for that eye bolt to sink into the walnut. Because sure enough, if I don't, I'm either going to split the walnut or I'm going to tear up my eye bolt trying to push it into that wood. This will give it a little relief as it goes in. And then I'll put a little dab of super glue on the hole before I jam it in there. And then this divot goes on the port side, so this one will go on the starboard, which means I got to have the fourth pin opposite of the one on the port. So I'll pre-drill a hole for that fourth pin. On the opposite side of the other divot. So now we'll just move over to the workbench, get all our tools. And over here, got this little block of metal to work on driving these pins in. So I'm cutting them off because they're way too long anyway. Cutting them off just enough to sink into that walnut, and with some super glue on them and a tight fit, because this is 0.7 millimeters and the hole is 0.5. Making sure that pin doesn't have a bad burr on it. Now I just used this 20 minutes ago. This is some pretty good super glue compared to the cheap stuff. I just got to keep cleaning the tip off because it keeps coming out when I grab it to open it up. I'm squashing the bottle a little bit. So I'm going to do one on the side first. Little dab on there. And get a real good grip on this pin or eye bolt. Hold your tongue just right. And turn it 90 degrees. So there's one. We're going to do two more. Or three more, because we got one on the side here too. But that's how we're doing it. And then I'll take it over to the grinder and grind it off for that part on the deck. And we'll be ready to install. I think I'm going to have to fashion the back of this to accept the angle of that top deck board, or the top rail board, the rail. But you can see that it's not too bad. You just got to be very careful with your drilling and shaping of the pieces before you install them. Okay, so we took the calipers and we measured from this corner of the divot to the center of the ship, and from the rail to the end of the divot, the inside of the rail. So we know where that angle is going to be based on, you know, from this position to the center and from this position corner to the center, because we've got a board there in the center that we can go off of. So we got a little mark on here where the corner of the divot is as it lands on the deck. And we got a little mark on the rail where the inside edge of the divot needs to go. So we took the file and put this in the vise, and we filed the profile for lining up with that mark and sitting on the rail properly. So now we're going to glue and pin it, and then we'll stick these little posts up there beside it after we make sure they're good. Get the glue open here and a little squirt on this spot. A little squirt on this spot. I've used a bench grinder to make a flat cut on that bottom because the file is easy to make a arc shape when you use the file. So you want to make sure that the cut you're doing is flat and at the right angle. So I just hook this onto the rail and stick it into the corner mark on my deck. I'm going to put a pin up here. That moved on me. Get my hammer. Check our mark down there. That looks good. And we're using the same pins that we did when we did the planking. Now I got to get that glue off. I don't have my rag wet yet, so I'm over here pouring some water on my rag. Use our little rounded tip on the metal ruler to reach into that corner. Get that glue off of there. You always got to move your rag to a clean spot. Otherwise, you just smear the glue everywhere. So that's one of them. This one's got a little rock to it. Oh no. How'd I get glue on there? I don't remember gluing both of them. I guess I did. I don't know. Because glue mushed out on this one, so we must have glued both of them. The reason I'm saying oh no is because I got a little rock here. That means I got to file off the outside here a little bit. Just a little angle. That might be that nail there. There we go. Still sitting on a high spot here. It's got to be that nail. There we go. Okay. Some glue on that one. Get to talking to the camera and telling you guys what I'm doing. And here I am, forgetting that I glued that already. There's my mark there. Just checking my camera view to make sure you can see. See what I see. I gotta get it started first. I don't want that divot to move. I'm looking at this from directly overhead, and that doesn't seem like it's in the right spot. I know this is because I made a mark. So when I wiped that glue off the deck there, I must have wiped my mark away. So this is the center here. To the inside edge. Yeah, see, it moved. moved enough where I could see it. 5 or 6 millimeters there. Now from overhead it looks a lot better. Yep. See, it busted that drill bit off because I wasn't helping guide it as I started. And I slipped off the wood and the bit is jabbed into the deck right there. Those things are tiny. So that was 9. I got one in the drill press, so yeah, this is 9. I didn't know I had one in the drill press the other day. 9 left. They'll break off real easy if you're pulling out the wrong angle. Yes. So, here we go again with the glue rag. Voila. Now for these little posts, there's a little burr on the edge there. I'm going to take that down here onto the sandpaper. It looks like that'll sit there okay. That one looks okay. I like to pre-place them to see if that cut on their bottom is plumb or not. So I think that'll work. And they do go on the outside of the divot. And these are not square. I think they're 5 by 3 and these are 4 by 4 millimeter. That's what they call for. Making sure the bottom looks okay before I glue it. And I want to put a little dab of glue on the side there where it's going to rub up against that divot. Sometimes on a post like this that you're just gluing down with the butt only and there's nothing next to it to help support it, I'll pre-drill a little pin in the bottom of it. And then stick that pin into the deck that's sticking out of the bottom of the post, and that'll really make it strong. Because something like this that's just glued down by the base only, if it wasn't leaning up against this divot, you could knock it off real easy, just, you know, not paying attention. These other posts are down into a hole that was pre-cut in the deck, so you're not going to knock them off easy, not depending on just the glue holding them, because they're down into a little rectangle shaped hole, and you could break them off, and that would be a fun little fix to repair, but they're not going to pop off just by the glue holding them down. So got a little bit more space over here than we do over here on this. They don't look too far off. I'm almost wondering what the difference is. I lost that mark. There's the center board there. So it could go out another 3 millimeters or more, couldn't it? Hmm. So that's within a couple millimeters. That's not too bad, but this over here needs to go that way a little bit. And I've already got it pinned down. So if I lift it up, put that screwdriver underneath the pin, push that pin up out of the, I didn't want to do that. Push that pin up out of the hole. Get a little glue on our stick. We want to add some glue to that. Now, we got like half a board in the hole. All right, stop filming there. So by eye, I'm going to just push it over to the same amount. Drive that pin back in the right spot this time. And then get rid of that glue there. So, that looks better. Wasn't too disastrous. Well, we got to drive this down though. In the process of prying up that other end. That came up. But we saved it. Okay. So now got that baby on there. We gotta find these pieces. And then there's some more little pieces here where the anchor rope goes through a hole that we gotta locate and cut, drill. And then there's some little pieces that go near that hole up in here, somewhere in this area. Well, I'm gonna go locate those other pieces out of the kit. But the bulk of this install looks pretty good from all angles is done. So as we finished up on installing these yesterday, I went ahead and did the stake here that has the anchor rope hole in it on both sides, and then put these little braces on underneath the divot. Got that finished up. And then I realized that we had never put the rubbing stakes on. So this morning, before I went ahead and did anything else, I did do these holes this morning. Got them ready for the anchor ropes. But I said, I better get the last of my Sapula long pieces out and heat them up and put those rubbing stakes on that go down the side that are for when the ship's in port. It helps wear and tear on the hull. So I got to do 3 on this side, or 2 at least. And I got some pieces pre-bent here for the short side because that's the cutaway view over there. And then I just finished installing the 3 rubbing stakes on this port side. And got them bent up. This is going to get trimmed off at an even angle, and the bottom of this one will get trimmed off. The top one there will get trimmed off. But I got them clamped for holding position that we got them heated in until the trimming is done. I might have to put some more tacks at the very end, but I wanted to make sure it had that curve and it hugged that rear of the ship, and the front came out pretty good. Yeah, part of my bow support was in the way, but I had to knock a little bit around the bow support for the first rubbing stake. But we got those 3 Sapula rubbing stakes on, which is a different kind of wood than the walnut. You can see it's got a different grain in it than the walnut does. So that's a good progress, because that was something that we'd sort of skip because it was going to be an easy step, and I wanted to get to something that was harder, and you know how you jump around sometimes. So before I get too far ahead and forget about that, because that was one thing that was back here in step 37, putting them rubbing stakes on along with the keel job. We did the keel job, so once these 3 in the front starboard side get done, that'll be it, because they're just some short ones there that go in the front. So we got a step that's next, which is going to be the I think it's 1.5 millimeter by 1.5 millimeter, or 2 by 2. Thought I had it way in here. I don't know what I did with it, but we got to create that net that is it built up there at the bowsprit. That's going to take some time getting that net created. So that's the next step after we get these last little pieces here. And those will be easy compared to the ones we just did. But so good progress. We'll continue on with some harder things here as soon as we get that dry and trimmed off in the back. Okay, we're working on those little safety net at the bow. Man, oh man. So this is a 1.5 by 1.5 walnut millimeters, 1.5 millimeters. So we're trying to duplicate that look that's in the plans, and you can see the stuff on the print, the blueprint. So they've got boards on top of boards. After we put these boards, which is like the middle brace, and there'll be some wider boards on top and on the bottom to create a little net area that they can't fall through when they walk up to get on the bow spirit. So these little cuts and all are fun. I'm just doing one at a time and getting it shaped right and then gluing it in there and going to the other side. So I'm alternating back and forth. Now I got to do the ones from the lower beam down to the bow, keel bow. I think I got 4 more to do on each side there. Then there'll be planks that get mounted on top of each one of those beams. You can see that plank there. And I think the planks are 2 millimeters by 1 millimeter thick. I gotta worry about that when I get to it and finish up all these pieces. And the first thing I did was I had these pre-shaped yesterday with the curve in them, and the first thing I did was cut to fit those and glued them on. And then I got some pins here that are jabbed in there to keep them from moving until that glue sets. And then while that was in position, I started putting the ribs in there one at a time. So this is fun, like I thought it was going to be. Yeah, one little tip to cut off, but I'll wait till everything dries before I do that. You can see how I shaped the end of that bow piece and then put a pin in to hold it down after I put the glue on it. And then the same up here where it's coming up to the tip. We got a pin holding it while the glue sets. So back to cutting. Oh, a little more progress. We finished yesterday. We got this stanchion here. We got these pieces put in behind the decorations in the back. And we got a couple of the sopula rubbing stakes on the cutaway side. I still got to grind that angle back there a little bit. But this side, for the steps we needed to do, is done. I got to do the other side now. These pieces and the stanchion. That drills through and sticks in there about 5 or 10 millimeters. And the step here that we're on is doing that stanchion, the decoration backing that goes on the other side of the ship, and the rudder. So I got all the pieces out to do the rudder. I'll be putzing with that a little bit today, and this other stanchion to go on the other side. And then of course, you saw us working on yesterday, here on the front of the ship. I just let the glue dry, so I got to go back in here now and clean up these edges a little bit. That came out pretty good. That's something I added, was these little planks on top of the beams that are in there. And I'll have to work on cleaning those edges and stuff up a little bit, but I think it came out pretty good though, the way it looks there. Not exactly the same on both sides, but it's pretty close. So good progress on that. We'll get in here and take off some of these edges that are sticking up too much. I don't know what else I'm going to do there. They show another board on top of the board that's in between the ribs, but I used a different kind of board, that basswood instead, to give it a little color contrast. I think it looks pretty good that way. So I'm going to go back to the working on the back end. Get all those pieces on here that you just saw on the other side. And then we'll start on the rudder. But making progress, one step at a time. Alright, sanding away on this. Yep, we can sand off the bottom after it dries. Liberal amount of glue, because there's a little void back there behind this piece that I want the glue to fill up in. And then we got a little piece of basswood. We need to cut to fit in here. Make a mark where the end of that other board is. And a mark on this board and cut it. And if I don't lose it after I cut it, I think I'm going to put it in with the wedge facing down. A little bit of glue on the sides and the back. Yes. And of course we'll sand or file that off later, and this up here and this down here. We'll have to sand and file this off so it matches this profile of the bottom, but we'll let those dry. We got the stanchion in. Got that piece of decoration on. Now I'm going to start assembling the rudder and the pins. I've got to install these pieces here and nail and glue, pinning. I'll use some super glue probably. Spread these out and get them bent right. And I think the one on here goes up near the top of this opening, and then there'll be a spot for the one that hooks to the ship to be on the bottom of this opening, and then there'll be a pin. I think it's a 1.5 millimeter pin, a pretty beefy pin that I got to cut and fashion to fit between those two to act as a hinge. So we got to put a bunch of these on, get them bent to fit right, and then start lining up the pieces. We got a mark to go on the ship, and then I think we get an eye bolt near the back here on the top, and then I got to read the directions, but I'm pretty sure I got to drill a hole in the ship for this stem to stick through up onto the deck. And then there'll be a rudder handle that they use to turn the rudder that'll get mounted above the deck, but they're not showing anything in this step about that. I just got to read to make sure that I do have to drill a hole in the ship from the deck down. Yeah, there it is right there. Sticking up through that grill is the top part of the rudder, and I think later on there'll be a handle that gets installed on top of that. So we will have to drill a hole. Yeah, down through that pocket there, and make sure that's in the right spot for the spot where the rudder's going to come up through. That's going to be a little tricky, but we got to get the rudder ready first before we worry about installing it. And after we get the hole drilled, then we can make sure that we get all these hinge pins and hinge pieces mounted onto the keel in the right spot so they line up with the ones that are on the rudder.